This is Ray Varner, class of 2010, here in Newport News, Virginia on July 12th, 2011 with the Oral Histories Living Legacy Oral History Project, and in particular, Women of Randolph-Macon Oral History Project. We're here today at the home of Ford McFall, class of 1993. She'll be the interviewee today, and we're also here with Sarah Hendricks and Claire Stevens from the Development Office. So, hello, Ford.
Hi.
So the first question that I have is just really, so where did you grow up? Where did you go to high school?
I grew up here in Newport News, and I went to Warwick High School.
Okay, so you've been here in the area for a long time. So what was the first time that you heard about Randolph-Macon College?
Well, I think I grew up in the United Methodist Church, and so the first we knew of Randolph-Macon was through the Methodist connection that the college has. And there would be articles and information about the college in the Virginia Advocate. It's a conference magazine that the Methodist Church publishes. So that was probably the first place that I became aware of Randolph-Macon.
Do you remember anyone along the way ever talking to you about it, any alums or anything like that?
No, I don't think until I went there, I did not know anyone who had been there. Once I went, then, people sort of come out of the woodwork. Oh, you're at Randolph-Macon. I went there too, or my, husband went, or so I began to know and sort of build a network of people that I knew who went after I had already gone.
And okay, so was just the Methodist connection the only reason you chose Randolph-Macon, or were there?
Well, no. I mean, I went to the campus and toured the campus and met some of the people on campus and considered weighed Randolph-Macon against the other schools that I was looking at, and ultimately decided that it was going to be the best place for me based on the Methodist connection, but that was not the primary reason. Also, the size of the campus and the different things that were going to be offered on campus and the things that were going to be available to me to do. And I liked the smaller setting, I think.
What did you think about the campus itself? Just the aesthetics, or?
Oh, I thought it was beautiful. I mean, when we came for the tour, the fountain in the middle of the campus is, something that you always remember. All of the brick, the brick buildings, I liked a lot. I thought it was a beautiful campus.
Okay. So, all right. Do you remember that first trip to campus as a freshman? Do you remember that?
When I arrived to move in the dorm as a freshman? Yes. I played field hockey for Randolph-Macon, so I came early. I did not go during the summer to any of the freshman prep type activities. I just came early for hockey. And in doing that, I moved into my dorm room ahead of most of the other students. The only ones who were there when we got there were other athletes. So we were there for, I want to say, at least a week ahead of the arrival of the rest of the freshman class. That was kind of a fun time. We were having multiple practices a day, so you were busy, and when you weren't at practice, you were tired. So you're resting or getting your meals in. But coming early to play sports, particularly in the fall, I think is a wonderful advantage because I got to meet the other girls on the team, but they were a broad spectrum of people, not just other freshmen, upperclassmen. The thing they had in common was the hockey, but they were all very different people. And I got the benefit of the upperclassmen. I got the benefit of their knowledge and experience on campus right off the bat. Getting to learn your way around, learn the social scene, where things are, where to hang out, all of that.
Did you have to go through normal orientation when the rest of the students came?
I don't remember that. I don't remember it. I did have to, you have to sign, you get in line and sign the honor code, or I can't remember in the very beginning, but we had all the freshmen had to line up and sign, and you had to be lined up in alphabetical order. I did those kinds of things.
Where did that take place?
I want to say in the history building. So Washington Franklin Hall, I'm pretty sure, in the sort of the foyer of that building, I think is where we were. We were in line under the trees where they
Oh,
would
so
have
you had to wait
graduation.
outside because that's a pretty small room. You can't
Yeah,
fit
you
every-
waited in line and then you came in and signed. I'm pretty sure, if I'm remembering correctly, you came in and signed the book and then went back out.
Interesting. Um, so what was the food situation like? Do you remember where you ate, where the cafeteria was?
We ate in Estes Hall, and I was quite happy with it, actually. I think my freshman year I ate a cheeseburger a day the entire year, because I I had always been, I mean, I have always been a very picky eater, and when you got to college and you had all these choices, you could sort of be selective and choose what you wanted. It didn't have to be what was put in front of you at home. So I thought that eating at school was fantastic. And I also was pretty friendly with the cafeteria staff. And I was kind of a small, very slight of build, really skinny girl when I came to school, and the cafeteria staff was always worried about me putting on some weight. So they would, sometimes they would pull out like a bag of bagels and send it back to the dorm with me and say, eat up now, put some meat on those bones. And I appreciated it tremendously. But so I thought that it was really I enjoyed eating in the cafeteria myself.
Do you remember any of those names of those personalities?
I don't. I can picture them in my mind, what they looked like, but I don't remember the names. I certainly knew the names at the time, knew their names, called them by name.
And they knew you by name? I see.
Yeah.
Yeah. Can you tell us more about your social life? So just, what you did if you were in a sorority or...
Right. Well, when I first arrived on campus, as I said, some of the upperclassmen from the field hockey team kind of took those of us who were freshmen on the team around, first weekend when there were parties. And we went in and out of a bunch of different fraternities, just kind of checking things out and getting the lay of the land. And then in the spring, I went through Rush and pledged at Alpha Gamma Delta. And I think that was based a lot on the girls that I had made friends with up to that point in the school year that were freshmen. And we went through Rush together and we were friends. And we really all wanted to go somewhere together. We all wanted to be in the same place. A lot of girls who had become good friends as freshmen, when they pledged, ended up in different sororities. I think those friendships continued, but not this in the same way as once you join a sorority and you become a part of that group. There are certain aspects of that separate you from people who are not in that sorority with you. And so I had a group of friends, freshman girls, who we were very close and we wanted to be together, and we wanted to pledge together, and that's what we did.
So were those girls your roommates or your teammates?
They were not my roommates at the time, but we did all room together. In the following years. But they were all freshmen in the basement. There were a lot of freshmen who lived I was in Mary Branch, and there were a lot of freshmen in the basement. Mary Branch was all female. And I started out in the middle, in Mary Branch Middle, on the third floor, so all the way at the top. And that roommate situation did not work out very well. When you take those questionnaires, or fill out those questionnaires and get matched up with your roommate, our match was not just not a very good one. I think maybe one of the reasons that we ended up rooming together is because she also came early for field hockey, and that probably made good sense to put us in a room together. The room that we were in, I came to realize when the upperclassmen moved on to campus, had always been a single, and they put both of us in there together. It was a tiny little room. So personality wise, it wasn't a good match, and then we were in this tight little space. And so by Christmas break, by winter break, I had moved out and moved to Mary Branch South on the first floor. And when I did that, I got to know the girls in the basement better. In the middle of the building, there are no stairs to the basement. But when you get in south and north, that's where the stairs are that go down to the basement. So all of those girls in the basement coming and going up and down, I got to know them and we became friends. And that's sort of how that came about. And then we all went through Rush together and pledged at Alpha Gam and have remained friends ever since.
Can you tell us more what that was like, just being in a sorority? So.
Well, I think at the time at Randolph-Macon, being in a sorority or a fraternity, sort of, if you were not in a fraternity or a sorority, your options on campus of things to do felt fairly limited. If you didn't have a vehicle and you couldn't get into Richmond, Ashland didn't have a whole lot going on. There was a movie theater, and that was operational at the time that I was there. I don't think it is anymore. But if you showed up, I think it was a minimum of 5 people. So if there were 5 people, they'd show the movie. If there weren't 5 people, they canceled it. So when you went to see a movie, you just made sure you had 4 friends with you, and you were sure to be able to see the showing. So the activities on campus there were not a lot of activities for non-Greeks. The first year I was there, they did have a homecoming dance that was not a Greek event. It was a school-sponsored event, but that was the only year it happened. The next year they didn't have it, and they didn't have it the other 2 years either. So I think being in a sorority really kind of gave you a place to be and a social group to be with and planned activities to participate in.
What kind of activities would you plan?
Well, let me think about that. In the fall, there was like a barn dance. In the spring, I want to say there was a crab feast. There was always a holiday dance that was a formal. There was always a spring formal. So I think that's 5 things right there that were, parties or formals that were a lot of fun. I mean, the crab feast was a lot of fun. They would this is something that Alpha Gamma Delta did, and the other sororities had their own events as well. But they would just buy bushels of crabs, set up all these tables out in the lawn behind the sorority house, cover them with newspaper, and you would just come and pick crabs and and visit with your friends and drink beer, and they played music and have a great time. It was a wonderful, just a fun evening. And the barn dance was usually off campus somewhere. They would find a farm that would, rent out the barn and bales of hay and just go and have a good time. Maybe you would, do a hay ride usually, and this is a lot of fun. And the formals were nice. You get to dress up, bring a date, and you brought a date to the other events too, but your date was dressed up and in tuxedos, and some just suits, but there were a fair number of guys who wore their tuxedos, and that was really nice.
Can you tell us more about what it was like playing on the field hockey team?
I loved it. I loved playing field hockey, and I still play, actually. This summer will be 27 years that I've been playing field hockey. So I'm fortunate that I still have the opportunity to play because when I started playing hockey in high school here in Tidewater, Virginia, Newport News, Virginia, it was not one of the major sports that you would see. I mean, it was a pretty small sport. And over the last, I would say, decade, it has really kind of taken off and hit a big boom. So when I came to Randolph-Macon, the only field hockey I had ever seen was what I had played in high school in the Peninsula District in Virginia. My freshman year, I got there and Dana Soper was the coach. She is now at Mary Washington coaching there, and her name is Hall now, Coach Hall. She was fantastic, fantastic coach. The training we did was just top notch, and I like being on a team, playing as a team. There's nothing better than when a team plays well together and you're like a well-oiled machine. And I don't think, generally speaking, I'm a real competitive person, but I am competitive when I play field hockey, and so I love that aspect of it. And I love being part of something that's bigger than just yourself. So the first year we had Coach Soper, and we did really well. I think we came in second place in the conference, and that was the best that we had ever done at Randolph-Macon in field hockey. Then Coach Soper left to go to Mary Washington and coach there. And the next 2 years we had a coach whose name I'm not going to be able to remember. But I don't think that she hit it off with the team, had quite the relationship with the team that we had with Coach Soper. And so we played well as a team because we had a good core group of girls playing. The year ahead of me, the girls who graduated in '92, and then the group that was in my year were a good, solid group of hockey players, and we had a really good rapport as a team. And so for the next 2 years, my sophomore year and my junior year, we played really good hockey. I think my sophomore year we took third place, and then in my junior year we won the ODAX. It's the only time that's happened so far in the college's history. Yeah, it was really a wonderful, just a fantastic moment. I mean, I don't really know what to compare it to, in terms of sports. For me personally, it was the pinnacle for me in my field hockey career, I would say. It was a little bit, though, as I said, it was more of a feeling amongst the team that we did it for ourselves, because we didn't have the coaching that we should have had or that we needed, I thought. So we sort of made up our mind at the beginning of that season when I was a junior and this really solid core group was seniors, that if we wanted to win a championship, we had to do it that year. It had to be done that year, and we had to just put our noses to the grindstone and get the job done, and we did. The captains for the team that year were Mary Fran Frankenheimer. Mary Fran was inducted into the Hall of Fame 2 years ago, I believe. And Alice, I'm not going to be able to come up with it. But anyway, it was a good group. Then my senior year, we had another new coach, so 3 new coaches in 4 years. And her name was Piep Van Huven. She was a very good coach. I wasn't with her long enough to see how her career went as a coach, but I think there were only 3 of us who were seniors who returned to the team that year. So that year was definitely what you would call a rebuilding year for the hockey program. We didn't place in the ODAX that year. So it was kind of a tough one for me personally to have hit this real high point and peak in your junior year. You really need to, you would like to see ideally yourself peak in your senior year. But that wasn't the way it worked out. And, you know, I still love playing. And there were a lot of young girls on the team. And I was a captain of the team that year. I think we were tri-captains. Kim King, Lisa Kelly, and I believe, were the tri-captains that year. So there were a lot of young girls who came in, a lot of freshmen who came in that year, and we tried to kind of give them a good, introduction to college hockey, and then that was sort of it. We graduated and went on.
So, did you also spend time with these girls outside of the sport?
Well, Kim King was an Alpha Gam with me, so yes, we spent a lot of time together outside of hockey. But no, not too much of the others. The group that was a year ahead of me were predominantly Phi Mu's, and they were very tight. And they, so they spent a lot of time together. But like I said, when you join a sorority, there are some things there that kind of guide your social activities and your social life. And so not a lot of time together outside of hockey. No. But I'm in touch with Mary Fran now. I mean, we're friends on Facebook. So, I came to see her be inducted in the Hall of Fame, and that was a really special moment for her. And I thought it was just a wonderful moment for our team, for that year of our team. Because I honestly never really felt like the college recognized the team for its achievement. Sort of a sad thing to say, I think, but I got a jacket that said ODAC Champions, and that's it. I don't remember there being any kind of, on-campus recognition of our achievement in any way. I think there might be, like, somewhere in the girls' locker room, painted on the wall, Field Hockey Champions in a year, but I've never seen it.
Why do you think that is? Why do you think there was no recognition?
Because I think they were having staffing issues with the coaching. I think that's why. I think that they had a coach who just wasn't a good fit, and honestly, in my opinion, wasn't a good coach. But here we won the championship. What do you do with that? It's a prickly situation to be in. So I don't think they did much with it at all. I think they just chose to not do anything with it. Honestly.
Did the other students, did they recognize, what you had done? Other students on campus, or did no one really know?
I don't think they even knew. I don't think so. And that's funny because that's the one yearbook I don't have. So, like, I don't know. I don't remember, if it was acknowledged in the yearbook. It may have been. It may have been. And it may be that, it was put in the school newspaper and I just didn't see it, or I don't remember it now, but I don't remember at the time feeling like there was really any recognition. If I hadn't said to my friends, we won, they wouldn't have known we won. And I don't think that they grasped what a big deal that was. Anyway,
I don't want to put words in your mouth,
right.
But do you think it could have been that it was a smaller sport? It wasn't football or baseball or basketball.
Right.
So, and also the fact that you are females, and it was so do you think that had anything to do with it?
Well,
It's a tough question.
It is a tough question. There's probably a little bit of truth to what you said, but I would not accuse the college of that. I don't think. I recognize it's not your big name. Randolph-Macon basketball has been phenomenal. Has a long history and tradition of, top-notch playing. And football, I know, has had some good runs, and certainly ODAC championships. I think that the college made a mistake when they did not better capitalize upon that moment of achievement, because I think it hurt the growth of the program over the long term. When they did not seize that moment and make a really sort of big deal of it, they missed the boat on recruiting, on recruiting a new coach maybe. I come to see Randolph-Macon play field hockey now. I live 2 miles from Christopher Newport University, and usually at least once a year, Randolph-Macon comes down and plays on the campus here. And I have gotten to know Coach Carper through the last few years. I think she's on the cusp of doing it again. I think that she could do it. I think the team is so close to a point where they could repeat that achievement. But it's been how many years, since it happened last? It was 1992. I think it could have happened a whole lot sooner if the college had done a little more with it at the time.
But did you ever, being in women athletics, did you ever think that it was any different than men's athletics, or did you think it was pretty much treated the same?
No, we didn't get as much money. I mean, where we played, it was across the railroad tracks. I know that the college has just recently built new tennis courts, but the older tennis courts, we were behind that, and the hockey team still plays there. We crossed the train tracks carrying all of our equipment. There was no storage facility out there for anything, so you had to drag all your stuff out there. And certainly the field maintenance was not what you saw on the football field. And there are no restrooms out there. I mean, that's sort of been that in particular has been, I think, a mistake for a long, long time, that there has not been a restroom facility. Now, I know the tennis center now, I think, has.
Well, the tennis center does, and that's moved, but there's also, in between where the field hockey plays and I guess the girls soccer and the softball field, there is now a bathroom pavilion there.
A permanent facility?
Yeah, and that was like a brick. It's
Oh,
really
okay.
quite good looking.
Okay, well, that's good, because
That's built in the
basically,
past
if you
year.
had to
Just the
use the
past year.
bathroom, you went in the woods. I mean, that was it. I mean,
believe that this season will be the first season that it was open, because I don't think it was open in last fall, because they were having, I guess.
I applaud that because it needed to be done.
And it also is a storage unit for
For equipment.
Yeah.
They did put in an electronic scoreboard, I think, while I was there. It was in place in my senior year. So that was good.
And I understand that when they take down the old tennis courts, they're going to use that space. And of course, this is contingent obviously on fundraising, but they're going to build a all turf field hockey field. That will be dedicated for recruitment and playing and
Yes.
this. But I guess they want that to be just as, as top of the line playing field as they can get. And that is slated for that spot where the tennis courts are now. The old tennis courts are now.
Good.
Once those get knocked down.
That's good. Well, they need to do it, because in order to continue to be competitive, we need it. You need it.
Apparently we're the only
Yeah,
school in the ODAC that doesn't have a turf field. And
Probably at least I would think more than half the games that they're playing against teams who play on turf. Now, if they come to Randolph-Macon to play, they're going to play on grass, and so that levels your playing field a little bit. But when Randolph-Macon has to go play a CNU who has a fabulous turf field, they are at a huge disadvantage as a team. It's a whole different game, grass versus turf, whole different game. So it needs to be done. It needs to be done, and I'm glad they're planning to do it. It's funny because I was at an alumni event here, maybe it was in January, but this past winter, and President Lindgren was here, and a friend of mine introduced me to him and said, this is, Ford Porter McFall, and she graduated in 93 and played field hockey, and the first words out of his mouth were, I know, we need a better field. I said, well, I'm glad that the message has gotten all the way to the top because you need a better field. But I'm kind of beating a dead horse there, I think. But anyway, I would be thrilled to see that come about. Absolutely thrilled.
I have a kind of the men's sports. Obviously, the men's main competition is Hampton Sydney. Who were your big rivals? I mean, what game did you get most pumped for?
Lynchburg.
Lynchburg.
Oh, Lynchburg.
All 4 years. I mean, is that still the
I don't know if it's still the case for field hockey, but Lynchburg was I would say, that one of our toughest teams to beat. And we always had to go through them to get to the ODAC finals. Always had to go through them. And back then, a lot of rules have changed to make the sport safer. But back then, when you would come to when you get down to sort of brass tacks at the end of the season and you would come to play in the conference championship, they would get their hair cornrowed and then put little plastic beads at the end.
to whip you?
And then they could kind of flip their hair around and it would yes, and it would hit you. Or the other thing is it's just kind of a psychological game they were playing with you because, when they run and it's clink, 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 you hear the noise. And here's the funny thing. The next year, so that my freshman year, we had Coach Soper, and we took second place. We played them and took second place. Played Lynchburg. The next year, we played Mary Washington, and she had gone to Mary Washington. We came to play them, and guess what? When we arrived to play them, their hair was braided, and they had little plastic beads at the ends. So she picked up on that. She was a fantastic coach, but she also, not only was she interested in the game on the field, she was interested in the mental game that you have to be strong. And she had brought that to Mary Washington. Now, I don't think that's legal anymore. They won't let you have any hard anything, not a barrette or a bobby pin or anything in your hair any longer. But isn't that interesting? I remember when we showed up and saw that, we were thinking, oh, boy. We were so angry, so angry. And they were a Division II team. So they were, they certainly had a whole lot more, I guess, skill and funds, with their team. So, I mean, they beat us. Of course they beat us. But it stung something awful to lose to your own coach the next year using this tactic that we all hated when she was, with us. Including her, she hated that, and then she turned around and used it on us. So I do remember that. But she comes sometimes. Mary Washington comes and plays at CNU, and I go see him play, and I go see her after the game. Still, after all these years. So it's a good memory having her my freshman year.
Right. Switching topics a little bit. So, what was your major while you were Randolph-Macon?
I majored in political science, and I minored in journalism and also in religious studies.
Did you come in knowing that was what you were going to do?
I knew that I wanted to major in political science. I had a teacher in high school who his name was Bruce Field, and he taught a class called U.S.-Soviet Relations. And that was it. It sort of sealed the deal for me. And I knew I wanted to major in political science. Majored in political science, graduated, and then the communism fell, and everything that I had sort of known about the Soviet Union changed on a dime, turned on a dime there after graduation.
Who was your advisor while you were at Randolph-Macon?
It was Howard Davis.
That would make sense.
Yes.
Right.
I think has he passed away? I believe he passed away.
Something like a year before.
I had
Bruce Unger passed away, so maybe in 2006.
all of the professors that I had have died. Earl Kuntz was one of my professors, and he died, I think, quite some time ago.
He was the
Young.
original, wasn't he?
He died young, very what I would consider to be young. Bruce Unger, and then Howard Davis were the three professors that I had in the political science department.
Brian Turner wasn't there yet.
I did not have him. And I don't know that name, so probably it wasn't there yet.
He went to the same school as Unger and Davis, and I think that they pulled him in.
Well, they were an interesting threesome, those guys, those three professors, all sort of middle-aged men, I thought they had a good rapport with one another. I didn't ever feel like I knew any of them very well or that they knew me very well. I know that, in some of the other departments, the students really got to know their professors and have, a close relationship with their professors. They got, further and further into their major. I didn't have that experience myself. Not to say that that was fine. It was fine, but I did not know them well personally.
You think there was a reason for that, or it just didn't happen?
I don't know. I really don't know. Maybe they didn't take a liking to me. Who knows? Who knows? I really don't know that I knew any of the other students, though, in class with me who did have a close relationship with. I wasn't aware of anybody who did. So that may have just been the way they operated,
So what did you minor in again? Religious studies and.
Journalism.
So do you remember who were your religious studies professors?
Well, I had B.J. Seymour, and I had also Daryl Hedrick, who was the chaplain at the college at the time. Those are the two that I remember most. There may have been, I want to say, another professor that I only had one class with him, a redhead, I think, but I don't know his name.
Do you remember anything about B.J. Seymour? Or
I thought she was wonderful. I really thought she was wonderful. I'm trying to remember the classes that it's funny what you can and can't remember. I can't remember which classes specifically I took from her, but I loved being in her class. I loved being in her class, and I always had a great desire to please her, to do well, in her classes. And I liked her as a person, She just had a peace about her, and a kind of common sense practicality about her that I liked a lot.
were there any classes that really stood out to you, or that you remember that are pretty important in your?
Well, this is going to sound, I'm sure, very silly, but there's a class that Bruce Unger taught called Modern Political Analysis. You had to have it for your major. And basically, it was a statistics class, political statistics class. I have never had a great track record in math. And I found that my math classes at Randolph-Macon it was just an ongoing nightmare, I thought. Mainly because these guys were math people and not able to convey as in a way that I could really grasp. And so I was quite anxious about getting through this modern political analysis class with the grade point that you needed. You had to make, what do you have to? You have to have a minimum of something in your
C plus or C.
Something. Yeah, I was worried about it. Also, I was worried because I think it was only offered one semester a year. So if you messed up, if you didn't take it until your senior year and then you didn't make the grade you had to make, then you could not graduate with your political science degree. So I was really anxious about that class. And sorry, that's the telephone.
Right, it's on it.
Okay, so modern political analysis. So you had to take it, you had to get it right, and you had to do it right the first time because you didn't always have a second chance. It was taught by Bruce Unger. So I went to him and I said, math is not my strength, but I want to do well in this class, need to do well in this class. And he said, fine, I'll help you. And so every day I had modern political analysis problems to do. I did something in that class every single day that entire semester. And I made A's through the whole thing. It was phenomenal to me. When I got my first test back, and when I took that first test, I thought, that wasn't so hard. Okay, I have either really blown it because I didn't even know that it was all wrong, or that wasn't so bad. And it came back with an A on it. And I did well through the whole class. Made A's, made high A's, not bottom, hanging on to the bottom rung A's. Good, solid A's. The whole semester, and I was really proud of myself. And then I went to the exam was the morning after the Jimmy Buffett concert. So I went to the Jimmy Buffett concert. I took the exam the next day and ended up with a B+ in the class. However, I would tell you that I worked the hardest for that class, of any class, the whole time I was there. And I was the most proud of the work I did in that class, of any class I took all 4 years that I was there. The most proud of the work I did in that class, because it was I knew it was going to be a challenge. I worked hard at it, and I did well. And I proved to myself that I could do it. I could actually do well in a math class. And I really think the key to that is who the instructor was. He was not a math person. He was a, political science person. His ability to communicate and to explain was a whole lot better in layman's terms for me than the instruction, at least I felt like, that I had gotten in the math department when I was taking the classes that were required of me there. So there's my Bruce Unger story. Yeah.
You majored in journalism. Did you write for the Yellow Jacket?
I did not. I sort of, two things about that religious studies and the journalism. Somewhere along the way, I got the idea that a political science major needed a way to be, you had to have a way to apply that in some practical fashion, and that maybe I should minor in journalism as a way to, it wasn't that I particularly loved writing. It was that I felt like I needed to have a way to make it useful in the job market. And the religious studies, it was just a recognition on my part, again, somewhere probably around my junior year, that I was really only a few classes short of a minor in religious studies, and why not get it? And so I did, and I could fit it in the 4 years, that I had allowed myself to get my, undergraduate degree. So yeah, it doesn't make any sense that I minored in journalism and didn't write for the Yellow Jacket, but I didn't. Looking back on it, you're absolutely right. But that was a fun group because it was tiny. It was a really small. By the time you got towards the end of those classes, those last couple of classes, I think there were like 6 of us in a classroom with, he was an adjunct professor, and he actually wrote for the Times-Dispatch, and he chain smoked through the whole class. So we were in the, I'm not going to be able to remember the name of the building, but it was where sort of foreign language is offered. Haley, that's it, Haley Hall. In Haley Hall, in a classroom with him, and he would close the door, light up, and they were Pall Mall cigarettes. So no filter. He would light up a Pall Mall, and he would start smoking. And I mean, he smoked the entire class, the entire hour, just chain smoke. He would finish one, crush it out, light the next one, and keep going. Just like that, the whole class. We would all come out of there smelling like smoke. And I would always wonder, how come the administration hasn't caught on to this, I guess sometimes he'd crack a window. I can't remember. But he chain smoked through all of the classes I ever had with him. All of them. I'm sorry that I can't remember his name. I'm sure that somewhere in the records that the college has, you could figure out who it is. He did not look like he was in very good health. I mean, the guy looked like he had lived a hard life. But I would think the pressure of being in the newspaper is, how it goes. Yes, he was exactly what you would envision as your newspaper man, stressed and really always a very biting sense of humor, very sarcastic. But I liked him.
Whiskey in his coffee mug.
Probably. I wouldn't have been the least bit surprised. You're right, because he always had coffee. He was chain smoking and drinking the coffee, the whole class. Yeah.
So, what did you do after graduation?
I took my first job after I graduated was with the City of Newport News in their tourism department. And after that, I left the city and took a job with the job market when I graduated was pretty tough. I had decided I did 2 internships when I was at Randolph-Macon. My junior year, I did an internship with a lobbyist in Richmond at the state legislature. I enjoyed that very much. His name was Jeff Smith. And so that was a really, really good experience. And then in my senior year, my J-term internship was in Washington, D.C. Bruce Unger arranged it for me, and it was with the press secretary for Senator Barbara Mikulski from Maryland. And that was a very interesting experience. But, and I loved, going into Washington and having your congressional pass and going into the Senate. It was the Senate Hart building, I believe, that I was in, and being able to go to the Library of Congress and check things out and look at things. And I mean, being there was just fabulous. I loved it. It was a fantastic experience. And that year was the year that Bill Clinton was elected. And I got lucky, and I got a ticket to the MTV inaugural ball. And so I got to go to the MTV inaugural ball, and I'm trying to think who else. There were a few people from the college who we got tickets to. We put our name in a lottery, I think, and got to go. And no cameras were allowed, but Clinton came, and he danced on the stage with Hillary, and I met Chelsea Clinton. And she was out in the audience with sort of mingling with all of us who were there. And she walked up. I don't remember how exactly, but I said hello and introduced myself. And she was little. I mean, she was a young girl at the time. And she said to me, "Do you think I look okay?" She asked me if she looked okay. And I said, "I think you look beautiful. And I hope you're having a wonderful time." And then she went on about her business. Peter Jennings, there were so many famous people in there. It was fabulous. Oh, it was just it's a great memory. Unfortunately, not a photograph to be had of it, no way to really commemorate. Somewhere there's a ticket in, a box in the attic that has my name on it, I guess. But out of that, I discovered that I didn't think I wanted to live in Washington, D.C. and work. It was kind of a cold, harsh place at times. People just aren't warm and friendly. They get on the subway, they mind their own business, they go here to there, and that's that. You don't have the kind of sense of community and that I thought I wanted to be in. And so I knew after I graduated that I didn't want to go to Washington, that I would be okay in Richmond and at the state capitol, but I did not think that Washington, D.C. was going to be the right thing. So the job I actually got was the Newport News, the tourism department, which is a pretty small department in Newport News. So eventually, for more money and more opportunity for growth, I took a job with Signet Bank. And then Signet consolidated I was in their mortgage division, and they consolidated mortgage and moved my job to Richmond. And I went to Richmond with the job and lived in the Fan and lived with Molly Phelps, who was one of my good friends all the way back from freshman year and living in Mary Branch. And then, it's funny how events come together to change the course of the things you're doing. My sister was in a really serious car accident in the summer of 1994 here in Newport News, here at home. And I needed to come home. I was not asked to come home, but I felt very strongly that I wanted to be at home and be back home with my family. She had she's fine now today, married and expecting her first baby, and life is good. But at the time, it was pretty grave. It was a pretty grave situation. And she was facing a lot of long-term recovery, multiple surgeries to just repair damage and injuries from her car accident. And so I left Signet and took a job in a commercial real estate company here in Newport News called Hamner Development Company. And I worked there in the commercial property management division until I left work to have a family. So only 3 employers since graduation. And the last 11 years, I've been wife and homemaker. Certainly our plan all along, my husband and I, Bill, knew that when we started a family that I would be at home. That was an important choice for us, and we planned for that. And then when it was time, when we had our first, I left work, and that's that.
So you still are involved with field hockey. It's 27 years. Do you coach or do you?
I play. I officiated high school hockey for a couple of years, but that got a little bit sort of difficult when at the time that I did that, I had one son, my first son, and then when I had my second child, it got a little crazy trying to work all of that out. So I stopped officiating hockey. I just play, but I can play year round. It's really fortunate for me that I can play year round. In the winter time, cold weather months, I play indoor hockey, and then in the summer, in the spring, and the fall, I play outdoors in a city league. So it's been good, and I've met a whole lot of people, who have had fantastic skills and I feel like even still helped me to learn and be a better player, even since college, just through playing on a team with them. Some of those were actually, most of those were men who were from other countries where the men play field hockey. So it's been a good experience and something that I continued to grow even after graduation, I felt like.
So over all this time, how have you stayed in contact with the college?
Well, one way is that I've supported the college financially through my giving for as long as I've been out of school. And initially, after graduation, I, would come back to campus, see friends who had not yet graduated, to come back for homecoming, 5-year reunion, I think. And then there was kind of a period where I didn't really get on the campus very much. And then when I had my kids, I wanted them to see the college, see where I had been in school. And so we've gone back a few times with the children, not for field hockey stuff, but, there's like a family weekend in the fall and this football game. So you know how the train tracks run right through campus? Well, the Amtrak station is not too far from here. So for fun, we get a ticket on the train here in Newport News, and we ride the train to Ashland with the children and get off and spend the day in Ashland, go to the football game, usually try to catch what other sports there might be, soccer game one year. And then we get back on the train and ride home, and the kids think it's the greatest thing ever. So we've done that, and that's a lot of fun. And they have, I think they have blow-ups, for the kids in bounce house or whatever. Now since Coach Carper has been there, she has been having the alumni field hockey games. I want to say that's been probably 4 years now that she's done that. I go back every year for that. And honestly, that has really strengthened my connection to the college, because she has reached out to alumni and sort of invited us back into the circle a bit in a way that, I don't know, it was the right connection for me, I suppose. So I have always through the years gone to see Randolph-Macon play hockey. If they played at Virginia Wesleyan or here at CNU, I come to see them play. And after the games, I always go up and speak to the coach or the team or whoever's there. But since she started having these alumni events, it's been really nice, and the kids always come. My husband and the children always come, and we've been coming enough years now. They started recognizing, recognizing us. They say, "Oh, you're the one with the 3 little blonde-headed boys." Yep, that's us. And so now when I see them other places outside of the alumni game, they recognize us too. So that's been really nice.
How do you stack up against them when you play? Do you only play alumni, or do you play the?
They play alumni versus the current team, and the current team always beats us. If they didn't, you know that they would be running laps and doing push-ups and stuff like that. They're supposed to beat us. However, this spring we had a 2-0 lead in the beginning of the game. So, the game's changed a lot. So, I mean, I play well, but I'm not in my prime, and so I can hold my own, but I'm not a star player anymore.
Should have stopped the time.
I'd like to change the rules back to what they had when I was.
Tell them to take off their face masks.
Yeah.
So you can go with your brains.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
All right. Do you have anything else that you want to say, or that we might have missed? Any topic?
Just a funny comment about the dynamics in our household. My husband went to Virginia Tech. And, the Hokie Nation is pretty strong. So I'm all the time sort of feeling like I'm pushing a boulder uphill saying, Randolph-Macon, Randolph-Macon, Randolph-Macon in front of my children. So we'll see what happens when it comes time for them to make their choices. But I do hope that, that they will look at Randolph-Macon and consider it as a good choice in their search for a college. The other thing is, one of the questions that I think I had read on the sheet was, about the influence of the coeducational experience, and was that a part of your decision making when you chose Randolph-Macon? The fact that it had recently gone co-ed. And when I think about that, I mean, at the time, it did not cross my mind. I mean, I knew Randolph-Macon was co-ed, and that was that. No different than any of the other schools I looked at, because I wasn't interested in an all-female college experience. When I look back on it and think about it, the 18 years or however long it had been that Randolph-Macon had been co-ed was really just a drop in the bucket in terms of the whole history of the college. But I was born in 1971, and I think that's the year that Randolph-Macon went co-ed. So my entire life, Randolph-Macon had been co-ed. So from my perspective as an 18-year-old, making those decisions, it was a non-issue. I think the other part of that is that I did not have someone in my family, father or an uncle or any other man who had been to Randolph-Macon. I had never heard the stories of the days when it was all male. So to me, in my mind, arriving on campus, it was as if it had always been co-ed. And it never seemed to me that there was any difference. So I'm glad that it went co-ed, because I had a wonderful, wonderful 4 years there that I remember very fondly.
One of the last questions, I guess, is if you could give advice, sort of in retrospect, looking back at what you know now and your life sort of experience, is there any specific advice you would give a young woman or a young man who is matriculating at the college? Something that either you regret not having done, or something that you were incredibly delighted that you did do, a very, very good experience.
Advice that I would give them as they're leaving?
As they're entering.
Oh, as they're entering. I'm sorry.
These 4 years
Okay, I see.
Transformative, but how to sort of.
Well, I think, that you should absolutely try to make the most of the experience. Try to take a broad spectrum of classes when you have the space in your schedule to allow yourself to try something different. Make the most of the J-term opportunities. Those were fantastic. And they taught me, the Washington, D.C. experience helped me to know in my job search where I should and shouldn't be looking. And I also think much of what I learned in school at Randolph-Macon, what I learned in my classes was important, but the other half of that, the other component of that, is what you learn about yourself in terms of how to manage yourself, how to handle yourself in social situations, what you can and cannot accept in terms of roommates, in terms of your relationships with the opposite sex. So, I would just say that you need to absolutely make the most of the experience, and because when you graduate, then it's really the real world. And there's not as much, you start to lose the, I think sometimes you lose the variety of choices because of the pressures of the world that come when you're out on your own. So I guess that would be it.
All right, and that's all we have. So thanks for your time.
Sure.